What is up, guys? Zach Ginn here live.
Rick Zach Ginn here live.
And in today's video, we are giving you the ultimate creative finance guide for beginners. So if you want to get into subject twos, creative financing, lease options, seller financing, just learning the world of creative financing, this is the video for you.
Definitely.
There's $8,000 creative finance mentorships that last like 2 weeks. And like they're really short and they're super expensive, and they're basically putting a stranglehold on learning creative financing. And we don't like that on the channel. We're not going to keep the secrets from you. One big example of creative financing, a lot of people tell you, oh, creative financing is great, subject to, but they never tell you how to find the seller.
Exactly.
They keep that behind the paywall for the mentorship, or they'll tell you one bit of pitching it to the seller, but they won't lead the contract, stuff like that. So we're bringing it all today. Like, we're bringing our A game today to teach you creative financing for wholesaling real estate, for real estate investing. You can even wholesale these deals. So this is a win-win for everyone. So I'm excited for it. Guys, comment below your creative finance questions. We are live, but really what I want to do is break down exactly how to get in creative finance today for wholesaling real estate, guys. Let's break it down. Before we get into it, guys, smash that like button and subscribe. It means the world to us. And let's get it going. We got to jack these people up, right?
You got to get pumped up
Let's
for
get
this
it.
one, man.
Woo! Let's go.
Let's go.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch. Go. Get up, and they got go. Time to wake up, bitch, get up. Get up, get up.
Oh yeah, let's get it, guys. We're going to be learning creative finance today. I'm excited. I feel like this is probably one of the biggest creative finance videos we've put together, like from start to finish, really getting it going. So you, as a beginner, you have no idea what creative financing is. Like, you've only heard wholesaling. This is awesome. So guys, on this channel, we teach you to become a complete real estate investor, not just a wholesaler. Yes, we like to focus on wholesaling a lot, but
great to start there.
It's great to start there, and it's the majority of what your business should be. But this channel is all about using real estate to create the dream life, and that's what we do, and that's what we love. So let's get it going. Let's start from the bat. Now I can break down creative financing forever. I love it, but let's talk to the person that's been doing it for how long? You've been in creative financing now?
20, coming on 20 years.
20 years. So you've seen a lot going on. We know the good old days from it, but also, guys, freewholesaling.com does have creative financing in it. Not a lot of people know that, but let's break it down. So here's the most important question starting out, right? What is creative financing?
Okay. So before I jump into it, I want everyone to understand my journey and how creative financing comes.
Are you a lawyer? Right?
No.
Lawyer?
So
I'm not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer. We're not
lawyers.
Here to give you legal advice. We're here to give you entrepreneurial advice on how to do great real estate deals. So
seek your legal counsel and an attorney before doing
correctly
anything
in your state, and make sure
that's what our lawyer tells us to say. So I'm going to say it.
So my journey in creative, I started out 100% a pure wholesaler. Like, that was my mission. That's what I did. And that was my focus, my first really 2 to 3 years. So I assigned everything. I sold it. This is back in 03, 04. And I did very well with it. What I found is through my wholesale marketing, I would have deals that come across and I could not make them wholesale, but they had the exact same motivation as my wholesale leads did. And I didn't have anybody to teach me at the time. And for full disclosure, creative financing has been around forever. Nobody locally invented, subject to all the stuff we're going to talk about today. It has been like 50 years plus.
We got this book back here. Real Estate Riches.
Yeah.
I pop it up because I have this bookmarked from 1977. They talk about how to take over mortgages subject to how to take a deal subject to the mortgage. Like this from the 70s. Nobody invented this. It's just a thing you can do.
It's been
right?
around a long time. So what happened is I would have opportunities come up. I didn't quite know how to take it down. I tried to talk to everybody. I used RIA groups and every now and then, and you believe it or not, I'm just going to give full props. I went back to the guys from the 80s, the originals, like the Carlton sheets. I mean, I've got lists of them. I don't have them all memorized. And these guys had it down pat. And what I figured out was if they had the same motivation, you just have to figure out how to strike that conversation because that's where I struggled. It was like, I don't understand if I can't hold a sale, that's what I'm going to do. Now, I probably missed out on 50 deals because I didn't know how to do them. And you guys are going to have that exact same theory. What I want you to understand, most of my subject to deals, anything creative financing, okay? Subject to is just a strategy within creative financing is they all came from wholesale leads. Now, we're going to teach you how to target specific ones, but I'm just telling you, this is why we want to teach you to wholesaling because it will lead you to become a complete investor. And once I figured out how to have the conversation with them to switch hats from my wholesaler hat to my creative financing hat, then it was just a matter of like, how do I take the deals down? And I spent a lot of time with lawyers, accountants, the whole 9 yards. And like most people on this planet, I figured it out over time. I will tell you, it's been a 20-year journey. And here's the thing you have to know about creative financing. You always have to be learning. It just never stops. Laws change, techniques change, and disclosures change, and you have to follow the suit. So, in my opinion, all good creative financing deals, they usually have some sort of root in a wholesaling lead. Now, you guys know our lists aren't perfect. Sometimes you get somebody on there who's got no equity, but they have massive motivation. Somebody gets really excited, either you or somebody on your team. You're like, I got this girl. She wants to sell really fast. And you find out like there's no money in it. We're going to work on that today and solve it. So that's my journey with creative financing. If you're wholesaling, it doesn't mean you don't have to creative financing. But if you dedicate to 100% creative financing, you can confuse yourself quickly. I like wholesaling because you can quick turn cash, you can generate money, and you can basically prove to yourself that you belong in this business. Creative financing is typically going to be a little bit longer term of a play, and it will help you get positive cash flow so you don't have to flip every day of the week. And that's what I always liked about it. So let's jump into the first question here.
Yeah, let's break it down. So I think one of the biggest parts we can talk about is, again, what is creative financing? So fundamentally, at the end of the day,
I'm not going to give you like Webster dictionary.
No, we're not going to the Webster
Wikipedia
dictionary, but creative financing really, in my opinion, is, of course, there's like 50 million ways to do it. But I think it really goes into 3 types: subject to, lease option, and seller financing. I think the biggest opportunity right now is probably closer to seller financing and for higher equity deals. Subject to is something that still works today. Obviously, a lot of people do it, but you're going to need some money to do it. But there's ways to do it without it. And on our channel, we do subject to deals all the time. We don't scream about it like crazy, but once or twice a year, we'll share some subject to deals we do for you guys, because majority of people on here are learning wholesaling real estate, right? They're learning how to actually make that 100K a year before they start getting into it. But this is one of the videos where we're going to break it down. So let's kind of break down those 3 things. Like creative financing,
so my definition of creative financing is when the buyer and the seller don't exchange. So if a property is 100,000 and you don't exchange 100,000 and you do not bring a third party in, and you work out some sort of terms or agreement, that's all it is, guys. It's really the buyer and seller putting something together without like a third party. Now, sometimes there's a title company involved. Sometimes there's not. It just depends on what state you're in and how you take this down. But creative financing is basically buyer and seller work together. So you do not have traditional banks coming in, which is, guys, let's face it, we can get so much more done without banks. And that's why I love creative financing, because the real money in creative financing is always going to be in the cash flow and actually using and utilizing that debt legally and correctly. So That's my definition of creative financing.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically using debt or creating debt. That's really where creative financing kind of flourishes. So you can create debt with something with a lot of equity, and without a lot of equity. So really quickly for a beginner in this, like, what is equity in your opinion in real estate?
Um, well, equity is a moving target. It goes up and down depending on what the market is.
Yeah.
It's very similar to like a stock price.
Mm.
So if I have $100 stock and I brag, hey, I got $100 stock, nobody cares. The only time it matters is when you cash that stock out, that you get $100 or more and you put it in your bank account. So equity, so you guys know, most homeowners, they have a perceived equity,
Inflated.
and it's usually going to be higher than what they think it is. So equity is basically the amount of cash they have in a deal. So if they had a $100,000 house and they tell you they've got $25,000 equity, it means they own a $75,000 note and they have $25,000. Either they paid into it or they paid the mortgage down. That is their equity. I find a lot of times the equity, once you get below like 15% equity, there's usually none left, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah. Also, equity, just like if you're starting out, it's basically how much the value of the house is minus what you owe for a lot of people. So let's say the house worth 100 and you owe $20,000. You have $80,000 in equity. 100,000 minus 20,000 is 80,000. That's how much you would net if you actually sold it today.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people think equity is, and that's basically what it is. So, quick example. Equity is calculated that $80,000 divided by the total value of the asset. So 80,000 divided by that 100,000 is 80%, right? So you have 80% equity.
Yeah, I think you're over explaining it. I think
No, what I'm trying to say. So
yeah.
when I say low equity, most of the time we're talking about 15% or below. Now, high equity, I would say about 60%, right?
Yeah, I mean 50% or more.
Yeah, so
at least they should have less than, they should have more value in what they owe. But here's the catch with creative financing. A lot of the people that most wholesalers or creative guys target are people with like little to no equity. The challenge when someone has 10 or 15% equity, guys, what do you think it costs transaction wise to sell these properties? We all, like you, me, we all know there's cost involved. Now, you take a regular homeowner, the costs are through the roof. 6% realtor fees, another 2% between title insurance, closing, and then there's recording fees, and then forget whatever they negotiate. A lot of times it could be between 10 and 15% just to close on that transaction. So a lot of times, I'm not here to run realtors under the bus, but if somebody has 10 or 15% equity and they sign a listing agreement, I almost promise you the realtor is not going to surprise them until the very end.
Yeah.
And when they get zero. And guys, it happens all the time. I know there's some honest, ethical realtors in there, but it's crazy. And to think that like we get targeted, like in what we do, it's misleading. I'm telling you, 10 to 15% will barely cover the cost of the closing. And that's if it goes for the sales price, which you know how that works with most realtors. So
it's crazy. So the next part, huge question we get asked all the time is, so really quickly, the difference between creative financing versus wholesaling. So when should you get into creative financing versus wholesaling, right? The biggest difference, right, is wholesaling is kind of active income. Creative financing is going to be more of that passive side.
So think about this. Wholesaling is always where you want to start, because when you get in this business, you want to generate cash and you want to learn how to talk to homeowners. There's no better way in doing it. Wholesaling, I will never change my stance on it. If you're dead broke, if you will do this business honestly and ethically, you can easily dig yourself out of that hole. I'm telling you, I've been there. He's been there. We've watched thousands of people for free get there, and you're no different. So wholesaling, it's quick, it's fast, it churns, everything's cash, and it's great. The downsides of wholesaling, as I told people, it is work. You have to work. Houses do not flip themselves on their own, and you are at the higher taxable rate because you're churning that income over right away. So you have some capital gains and stuff like that. Now, creative financing, it's a longer term play. Some of them can be big short term gains. I'm not going to lie to you once you get the skill set to do it. the tax advantages are much more favorable on any type of creative financing, and you can ride stuff out. And I've already talked about the tax advantages, like through the roof. It is a slower long-term play. I meet people all the time that collect hundreds of creative financing deals, and they build an amazing portfolio. And what happens if you get a property and each one gets $300 to $500 in cash flow a month? What if you got 10 of those? What if you got 20 of them? And remember, you know what's happening on a lot of these. And I found this out the hard way. Actually, the good way is I would find people with 30-year mortgages that were 20 years into it.
Yeah.
And then they'd say, listen, Rick, I just asked them, hey, do you mind if I just take over your mortgage? And then I would come up with a fee, whatever it was, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. And I figured out, I played the arbitrage, because on a 30-year mortgage, without getting into the complex of it, after the first, I think 15, 16 years, you primarily pay down principal.
Yeah.
So basically, when you're paying that mortgage, you're just paying principal. So the arbitrage is absolutely huge. It means you might have a $60,000 mortgage, but in like 7 years, the whole thing can be paid off.
Yeah.
And it's all going to principal. Very little is going to interest, as opposed when you get someone who just got a 30-year mortgage, the first 7, 8 years is painful. Very little of the debt is actually paid down.
Yeah.
So for that reason, one's long-term, one's short-term, one has a little bit more advantages. But with creative financing is you can create that positive cash flow. And then that way you're not stuck on the hamster wheel for the rest of your life. Listen, we all start out wholesaling. We're hustling. We're doing it good. If you can do a combo of the both, it's phenomenal. So what I want you to do is do your wholesaling business. And when that opportunity comes up with creative financing, you don't just overlook it and go, I don't do that stuff. That's what I did, guys. I'm telling you, I started out doing that. And then I started looking back. And as market changed, as cycles changed, I completely took advantage of it. And it allowed me to get out of the, I have to flip 100 houses a year to survive.
Oh, yeah.
So both have their pros and cons, but a balance of the two is, in my opinion, the best way to take it down.
I agree. So this comes down to the next part here. Is like, what are subject twos? So it's kind of getting to subject twos. Taking over mortgages, basically subject to, and breaking it down. So in your opinion, what is a subject to?
A subject to is like, this is crazy. It's exactly what it says to do. So, and actually, a lot of you don't know this. Subject to is actually provided on most real estate and lawyer approved contracts. There'll be a section on there and it'll actually say, you ready for this? Subject to.
Yep.
Okay. So if I'm buying a house from Zach and say I'm paying him $100,000 for the house, for simplicity terms, I know nothing's $100,000, but it's $100,000. He's got an $80,000 mortgage. And so he has what? $20,000 in equity. Just for subject to demonstration, I say, Zach, I tell you what, I know you're like, you're moving to Canada. Like, I get it. Your life's changed. I can pay you that better price we talked about on this condition. Can I just pay your mortgage for you?
Just take it over, right?
I'll take it over. It'll be just like you were paying it. And that way your credit doesn't get destroyed. I keep payments on time, and it's a win-win, and you get more money in your pocket today. Does that sound like something you want to work with?
Sounds good.
Okay. So basically the subject to part is the $80,000. That's it, guys. A lot of people, there's a cute nickname out there, sub to. It's just short, not an acronym. It's just short for subject to. A lot of people are like, what's a sub to? It's not a submarine. It's not a subway. It's not a Tom Brady subway type of thing. Although Tom Brady does probably make a damn good sub. It's just short for subject to. So how you take it down is like a whole nother story, but that is the subject to amount. So if Zach was paying $600 a month, then I take over the payments. I'm going to want to find out if what's included in that $600. Sometimes tax and insurance are included, but guys, subject to is simply taking over the other person's mortgage and you making payments. And by the way, you have to make the payments when you take them over. Yeah. If you don't take them over, that's not a subject to, that's a hostile takeover, and it's fraudulent. And that is not what we're talking about.
We do win-wins. So here's the thing with subject to. Completely different than wholesaling. Like, go out there, speed, get it done. Subject to, you are like you're hands off. You are chill. You are, if somebody doesn't want to do a subject to, you're not going to, and don't do it. We're in the business of, if a seller for wholesaling wants to agree to the contract, let's do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest issue is in wholesaling, you sometimes get someone on a contract, they come back in a month and say, you know what, I don't think I want to sell right now. That's fine. Subject to, after 4 months, it's not good if that happens, right?
So let's jump into, I don't know if I'm jumping around on topics here.
I'll break this down really quick.
Okay.
Too. The benefit, guys, for you, like, you don't have, let me just break this down. This is going to be a hard truth for a lot of people. You're not going to learn all of this today. Like, you're not going to have a complete grasp of the whole thing today. You're going to have to watch this a couple times, watch more like creative finance content from us, go through freewholesaling.com. I took me about a solid 6 months to get a complete grasp of every type of creative financing. There's so much. There's tax things. There's payments.
And what I had Zach do when he first started in the business is, when we were working leads, I just told him that, look at everything, look for the motivation. And then when the deal comes up, I showed him the mechanics to take him down. He didn't learn it in like a day, a week, or even a month. It just took time.
It took time for it. But the thing is, you're not going to learn it all, but over time, it'll get a lot easier and you get better at it. So that being said, the benefit of learning this stuff is, let's say that example, you take over a mortgage for $600,000, right? You could probably see, I have no equity, so I owe 100 on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is worth $90,000 because the market goes a little weird. Or even now, sometimes there's loans like that, right? So let's say, for example, the property is worth 90 and I owe 100 on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my payment's $600 a month. Now I know the amortization, I don't have the chart thing on me. You could probably rent that thing out for $1,200 to $1,400 a month. That's your benefit. So the cool part about that is he'll probably give me $5,000, maybe $10,000. And what I'm going to do, what you're going to pay me my 600 and I'm clean cut. I can buy another house. We can get to that a little later. But my PITI will be fine. And then my income and my debt to income ratio will be fine. So the cool part is you rent it out for $1,400. You're making $800 a month in profit. Obviously there's payment, management, all that. You could probably net to yourself $400 a month in profit over a year. That's about, let's say, for example, $8,000. Let's say you make $8,000 in profit from that deal in a year, and you just gave me 10. What's 8 divided by 10? That's 80%. That's an 80% return.
The returns can be insane.
There's no, I'm not going to say the word, but there's no TNF. There's no little digital monkey on the internet you can buy that will give a return like that. There's no digital dollar you can buy online that will give you that, like 80% year over year, backed by something like that you can sell pretty quick.
I got it. So
it's insane. That's why we love it so much. And that's how you build true wealth.
Yeah. And when they come across the desk, we take the opportunity.
Oh yeah.
When you go out and hunt for creative financing, it's a whole different game. And there's certain markets where it's more advantageous and sometimes it's less advantageous. So I want you guys to understand, because we are wholesalers at heart. I will always be, because that's who I am, is a creative financing deal. You cannot force this deal. I promise you, if you force a creative financing deal, it's going to blow up in your face. Ask me how I know this. I'm telling you, you have to pretty much be, in my opinion, for a subject to, a last resort. Okay. And in the market, like in our current market right now, there's a lot of people put stuff under contract and it doesn't work out. If you can come in and be the hero in creative financing, amazing things can happen. But if you reach, if you overextend, if you overpromise, you are forcing a deal. Creative financing, you got to understand, a lot of times you got to deal with these people, sometimes 5, 10, 15. I've dealt with somebody 20 years in creative financing. If they think you rushed them, forced them, or manipulated them, it will blow up in your face. And if you ever wind up in any type of litigation in real estate, if the one person will take you down the fastest is the homeowner. If they think you took advantage of them, especially in a creative financing, it'll be a problem. So you want to make sure they've exhausted every option. it's going to work. There is no tricking, forcing.
Yeah.
It has to be, please. Every one of them's just like this. Rick, please buy my house. I'm desperate. I have no other option.
You have to exhaust the option with the seller. We're going into detail on this because we need to. Hey, why don't you list the house?
Just get it out of the way.
Why don't you try to go to those cash people then?
Correct.
Oh, I won't have enough money. Why don't you try to rent it out? I don't want to rent this thing out. You have to exhaust
everything,
single option. You can't force the deal, but I'm telling you, you do this long enough and you do enough marketing, these just pop up and they are amazing.
So you want 100% like, hey, I have to do this. Like if you're negotiating a creative financing deal, you're going to be in trouble. So it either works or it doesn't. It's a lot different in wholesaling that aspect. And I got to be honest with you, that was one of my biggest challenges when I do that. So on a subject to taking over someone's mortgage, keep in mind their credit's tied to it, which is usually going to be their biggest objection. And they're entrusting you to make the payment. Now, the good thing is we have very modern technology where you can keep everybody in check and balance on it. You can even use a third party to pay it. You don't need to do that starting out. But I'm telling you, you have to do exactly what you say. You have to put it in writing. And by the way, I don't take creative financing deals down in an hour.
No,
I take weeks.
We walk in without a contract.
Yeah, and
you
just
always do.
But I'm just telling you guys, if you don't get anything else from this understanding, you cannot force a creative financing deal. If you need to contact that seller in 10 years, you got to know that you can call them and like, you don't want to call someone and go, oh my God, I got to call that. I got to call Susie. No. She's going to she didn't like how we took it down.
No.
Hey, Susie, I want to call you. Oh guys, I love you guys. It's great. I'm telling you, it's something that's often overlooked, but you have to have compliance because the documentation, the escrow, there's so many things on the back end that you'll need their cooperation on that you have to have that compliance. And by the way, they're putting their best foot forward. So if it's starting off bad, can you imagine 3 or 4 years? So that's my experience, guys. I don't do hundreds and thousands of creative financing deals.
We don't do 15 a month. We don't.
I don't.
Trust
but
me.
When they come across my lap, I take them and I do it responsibly. I show them my track record just because I've done a lot, but I'm just telling you, if you're just starting out your first deal, they want to know you're trustworthy. It's probably the biggest thing that you can demonstrate to them. So how you get that across to them is going to be the most important thing. It's never going to come down the price. I promise you, creative financing, especially subject to, does not come down on price. So
that's what you overpay. But remember, one of the biggest things you can learn, this is stuff you got to pay a big mastermind to learn. But at the end of the day with creative financing, it comes down to two things for a real estate deal. Either you as the investor need to get a good price for wholesaling. So let's say it's worth 100 to a cash buyer. We either got to lock this thing up for 70, make 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if they want 100, fine. You can get your price, but I want my terms. And my terms are going to be, I want to take over your mortgage, right? You either get price or terms.
You don't get both. Because if you got both, someone's getting hurt.
So you can just Venmo me $8,000 for that information. I appreciate that. But
you just can't get both. That's my dream. I'm telling you, in my 20 years,
that's not in the seller's best interest.
No, I know. I've had people literally give me a house. Rick, just take it. Listen, I got to get them something. You can't do stuff like that.
We have creative financing deals now. We try to pay these people and they're like, I don't want to take the check. They're like, don't worry about the check. Don't worry about the $2,000 this month. I'm like, I want to pay you. I'm getting $3,000 a month on this property, right? So guys, it's crazy out there. I call real estate investing kind of wealth in general. It's like a video game. I don't know if you like the analogy, but a lot of my video game people, the more experience you have, experience points, the better you are. So you start doing 15, 30 wholesaling deals, it becomes so much easier to do wholesaling deals. And guess what? I have to say we have a big advantage. Now we're on our high horse here. When we have a sub 2 deal, I can go tell the seller, hey, here's 50 rentals we have in this county. And we can just list them off and they'd be like, wow, I can really trust you. Wow, Rick's been here for 20 years too. Yeah. See, we have an advantage over it. It's really easy for us talking about deals we have now because we can go to a seller, do that. I understand where it's at starting out though, because we have. So I want to address that. But what I can tell you right now is subject twos are super important. They work better during tougher times in wholesaling.
So let's talk about that. Okay. So we're in Can I say what year we're in?
We're in 2022.
2022. So, guys, we're off to a busy like real estate market. I've been around 20 years. It will not be like this forever. Because I've been through so
Things are
many
changing
markets.
now.
But
Interest rates are going to be
when
rising.
things changing. So let me give you a little example. When COVID, I'm sorry.
Bad word. It's going to get 2 views now.
I know. But when this whole,
The panoramic.
I call it epidemic. What do they call it? Endemic? And whatever. Anyways.
You can't say that word either.
Whatever. 2 years ago when it hit I was just like, okay, I was salivating in the mouth. Like, okay, we're going all in on creative, like finance. It's not that we went all in. We just turned on that channel hard. Now, remember when we did that marketing?
It was great.
It was ridiculous. Okay. And we're going to talk about specifically how we did it. But what happened is the market wasn't quite ready for it because you guys know what happened to the market in the last 2 years. I will tell you, on a market that's falling off a cliff or rapidly declining or where there's inventory sitting on it, you can get creative financing everywhere. I took down a $2 million mansion on the water in 2010.
Indian River Drive.
Yeah, Indian River Drive.
Treasure Coast people.
10,000 square foot with a
drive down Indian River Drive. It's like
with a 200-foot dock.
It's the poor man's Ocean Boulevard in Miami. But what I'll tell you, if my Treasure Coast people watching, if you drive down Indian River Drive, the biggest, fattest house there, creative finance deal from us. But
I dragged him over there. He's a little bit
but
younger.
I can tell you right now, I'm going to address this because I know a lot of people are kind of stressed right now.
Who's stressed?
The people watching, because
Okay.
they don't understand this, or they might not if they're brand new. You might think if the wholesaling real estate market goes down, you're done. Like this whole industry is done. Here's the cool part. Creative financing is going to be more important, and we're probably ramp up more creative finance content if that happens, because we're just going to be doing more creative finance deals. When the panoramic hit, so I'm going to call it, we were doing a lot of creative financing, probably more than wholesaling deals. And guess what? We talked about it. We shared it. We went to videos. We did all this. I had my hazmat suit on, So what I'll tell you is when the real estate market goes down eventually, we are going to be holding your hand for free, and we're going to show you the exact thing. I promise you, we are going to be here to help you out on every single thing. Guys, even in this video, people on our Wholesaling Houses for a Mastermind, at the end of this chat, they can go and talk to us one-on-one, and we're going to tell them all the creative finance content we want, So for everyone stressing, like, oh my gosh, if the market goes down, I'm screwed. We're going to help you.
Yeah, but listen, guys, when you wholesale, you're never really screwed because you're moving the property fast and you're not subject to the massive drops. You're not taking it to market. So
things like the stock market.
Don't worry about that.
Very slow.
Creative financing, for full disclosure, it still works today. You got to have pretty good skill sets. And the key with like creative financing, I know it's all about cash flow, but you do not want to reach. So if you're working on a creative financing deal right now and you are reaching and you're begging to do it, you do not have a good creative financing deal. End of story. And I tell you, the ones that I reached on are the ones that I got killed and I moved on. Now, did I fail? Yeah, but I learned a lot. I learned what not to do. And that's what we're here to kind of share with you today. So
let's break it down. So for subject twos, we're going to break down subject twos right now. Again, guys, when the craziness happens in the market, it's best to actually know what subject twos is before be like, oh shoot, the market's crashing. Let's go to Rick and learn subject two. Now, it'd be good if you have some knowledge like today when that happens. So you just have some sort of, understanding. So now we know what a subject two is, why I love subject twos, why we're going to go after them. Let's kind of break down another elephant, which is behind an $8,000 paywall, $7,800 paywall, is contracts for subject twos, right? This is like where nobody talk, like you got to be part of my mastermind to learn this. All right, did they pay their money? Can we talk to them? Are they in the private Zoom with us with 500 other people? No? Okay.
Guys, this stuff's been around forever. There's no secrets in it. Are some people better at it? Like, they just got more experience.
And I want to say this too. I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't think we said this at the beginning. I kind of feel bad. Creative financing is going to cost money. Wholesaling real estate is the ultimate $0. I got no money, broke to make it. Subject to, I'm not going to charge you to teach you it, but I'm going to tell you there is going to be some upfront stuff and you're going to have to do. And I can tell you, it's not going to be thousands and thousands, but it's going to cost some money to do.
Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it just,
Sometimes it doesn't.
in today's world, I would advise it because you're trying to establish trust and credibility. And if you go in like zero down nothing, they're like, what do I need you for?
Yeah.
So, okay. Subject twos. We're talking about contracts.
Yes.
Guys, like, I want you to understand the contract for a subject two, it's already built on your standard, like, real estate contract. There's a section in there to put it in. These contracts, that's the only, in my opinion, really the only substantial difference. Now, I can tell you a lot of people have contracts out there that are completely one-sided in favor of the investor. I'm telling you, you can put whatever you want on a contract, but if you ever get into litigation and if you've ever had to sit in front of a judge, which I have, by the way, he or she's going to look at your intent. And if it's such a one-sided contract, they're going to tell you you're a professional, you took advantage of the homeowner, and they're going to eat you alive. So if you have one of these contracts that are so one-sided, it says you can do all this stuff, and in the end, you can walk away even if you don't pay the mortgage. I'm just telling you, it's not going to hold weight in court. So I don't want to debate every contract. The only real fundamental change is under the terms, there's a subject to note, and you put it there, and then typically the note would be attached to the back. You should be able to review any mortgage you take over because you need to know what you're getting into. And you guys have to also understand, I'm just going to throw this out here. I am not a lawyer, but you need to review what you can do and what you can't do because there's certain types of loan you literally cannot take over. It's actually a problem. Let me give you an example. USDA rural development loans, okay, they actually require the homeowner to be an occupant of the property. It is a condition of the mortgage. You know how I know this? Because I've worked with the guys that go around and do these BPOs and the inspections.
I have price option.
Yeah. They go around and verify that you live in the house. Guess what? If you don't live in the house, they're in violation. They're going to call that note due, and there's going to be massive penalties on that homeowner. And you can create a problem being an investor doing that. So I just want you to know, if you see USDA, rural development, don't do it. I know you can take over any one of them. I'm just here to tell you, you take that one over, you are going to create hardship for the homeowner. So I don't know every mortgage. I'm not going to sit here and tell you. There's a big debate. Can you take over an FHA in the first year or two? I think you can, but like I would still probably run it by a lawyer just to make sure like you were up. So I would have someone just read the mortgage and make sure it's okay. Remember, subject to, you're taking over the terms. So if I take over Zach's mortgage, I'm taking over the exact terms. In the old days, every mortgage was called assumable. A lot of them were assumable. And assumable means you have to qualify with the bank. Then they got some more fees, all that fun stuff. There's very few loans that are assumable anymore. The banks want to turn them over and make their fees. So when you hear the word assumable, back in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s, there was a lot of assumable loans. Yeah. There's very, very few and far between now. So the only ones I'm telling you stay away from is USDA, because I know they go and verify the occupancy. They are huge sticklers for it. That's the only note. The contracts, guys, I'm telling you, they're not complicated. It's just the terms. So if you're buying a house for $100,000, you're taking over an $80,000, $90,000 mortgage. That's the subject to part. And so that would be minused out. And then you go, hey, how much do you want to give the homeowner? That's up to you. Sometimes they get very little. Sometimes they get a few $1,000s. Sometimes they get 10 grand. It's the negotiable part.
Also, by the way, contract, another big contract we do love. We don't scream about it like crazy. Check out your laws in your state, but land contracts, technically you can do subject to without even taking the mortgage over. That protects you from the due on sale clause. Guys, the due on sale clause, most mortgages say if the property changes hands, the mortgage is due. Now, technically, if you take it over, it's not, but banks can get technical. A land contract, I'm not getting this. You guys got to do your own independent research, but a land contract is probably one of the safest ways to legally do a sub two. And
we need to do a whole separate video.
No. But
we'll do a whole separate.
I have to include this in the ultimate guide.
They're really good.
Look it up. They're really good. Consult. If you're going to do a land contract, you need to consult an attorney in your state to make sure it's well and it's done properly.
And guys, understand what the attorney is. You really do it once to make sure you pass the snuff test, and it will give you the confidence and the ability, and it will actually save you a ton of money in the long run. I'm just telling you, creative financing, why most people are so confusing is there's so much information coming out you. And that's the problem. Honestly, I've never met anyone that did creative financing on any type of large level that does not work with an attorney on like a regular basis. So,
I agree. So now we kind of learn more about subject twos, all that process. Here comes the next part is how do you find a subject two? Like, how do you go market for them? How do I actively go look for these things?
well, let's just cut through the chase. I'm going to tell you, if you're new to creative financing and you're looking for a subject two, I'm going to give you the absolute best place to get them with the least amount of resistance and the biggest, most massive profits.
Tell me.
Probates.
Oh,
okay. Guys,
we should change this channel to just probates.
It should be, but I'm just understand probates is the process when somebody passes away, they assign a personal representative, an executor, whatever it's called in your state, and that person's in charge of basically wrapping up their financial affairs. Real estate's usually their biggest asset, and most of them fall below the threshold where it can be expedited in the local courts. It's a summary of administration in Florida. There's 3,600 counties. I can't go through every one of them, but I have extensive experience in doing this. And I do not wait till probates are over. A probate can last for years. You can get an asset pulled out of a probate within 60 to 90 days. I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times, and it works really well. The reason why probates work so well, if a person's passed away, you now eliminate the biggest obstacle somebody has on a subject to, which is you're going to screw my credit up if you do this. Well, the credit's assigned to the person that passed away. So if I have a $100,000 property, say it's worth $100,000, a little bit run down, and say they've got a $70,000 mortgage on it. Okay. Say it's in good shape or whatever. What if you gave them $1,000 or $2,000? Because they look at selling at the realtor, they do the math, decide if they're one of the real, and they go, what if you just gave them their equity right there? Maybe it's 1,000, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 15, 20. And then what I'll do is take over the mortgage and I'll make the payment. Now, keep in mind, am I going to screw up your credit with your family if I take over your passed away grandfather's mortgage?
They might not be able to qualify for another loan.
Let's see. So
I'm saying that like lightheartedly, but like
think about it. A lot of times they're getting their equity right there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be creative. You can give them $5,000 up front and you give them another like 5 when you sell it.
Yeah.
You can do all sorts of stuff. And here's the best part is if they get what they feel is a fair consideration and they move on, maybe the house is rough, we got to fix it up. And say there's 15 years left on that mortgage, I don't even have to negotiate how long I'm going to keep the subject to for. So a part of a subject to is if somebody has a 30-year mortgage and say they're 3 years into it and there's 27 left on it, a lot of people will fight you and they go, listen, you cash this thing out and like, you're going to cash it out in a year or two. No. We're going to go through that. I tell everyone, you got to get at least 5 years. You've got to get 60 months to make any creative financing deal work. When somebody passes away in probate, how long do I have to negotiate that for? They don't care. As you can pay it off. And here's the even better part is you eliminate the trust issue other than what they want to like doing the deal with. Because if you don't pay the mortgage and you cash them out, what do they care? You foreclose on the house. It's none of their business anymore. And so I'm telling you, probates is the fastest way to get the best creative deals because it's very easy. I know it's going to sound terrible, but I'm just going to say it's very easy to take over a passed away person's mortgage. There is no debate unless now some family members are just completely uncomfortable and I respect that, but there's no credit. There's no credit debate. There's no, how long do I have to cash this subject to out to you? It's very, very black and white. And it's, in my opinion, my absolute best subject to deals always came from probates. They are perfect. They are prime and it's easy.
All right. That's how you do it. Like you go through probates. How do you find the probates? Go to the clerk of the court. pull them and market to them. You know,
So that's number one. So I would do that right off the bat because
tax liens, right?
yeah. So you already market to them anyways in your wholesaling business. I'm saying when it comes up and there's a mortgage, get excited, guys. Get excited because you have opportunity. Very few people object taking over the passed away person's mortgage. You're not risking their credit. They're going to get their equity, whatever they feel is a fair share. So it's a huge win-win. And those deals go down very, very fast. I can usually put them together in just a couple days. My next favorite place is really, if you want to target creative financing, remember the most creative financing is going on subject twos is going to be people that have little to no equity. How do we find people with little to no equity? What's the average percent of money you think a person puts down on the house in the United States when they buy?
Technically 20, but
20 is brave. So there's a lot of loans.
Great. I mean, there's a 3.3 and there's
so
a 3%,
there's a lot of like
yeah.
3% loans out there, like FHA loans, a lot of like government loans type of deal that are very low percentages. Guys, if they miss one job, they do anything, they're at risk of losing those houses. So what you got to do is just take your list that you're already pulling and wholesaling. If you guys want to target these, okay, and you can pull people with low equity. It's very weird for us wholesalers to pull people with low equity.
Yeah.
It freaks me out. So what I want to do is find people with less than 20% equity in the house. That's all you have to set your filters to. Okay. You want them owner occupied, not absentee. And you want them in the house, usually less than 5, maybe 7 years, but definitely like 5 is my number to pick it.
Yeah.
You run that list. I don't care what market medium you find, your phone will blow up. It's out of control because now, if you can find someone who's got an extra lien on it, any type of default, you can do credit, NODs and stuff like that, notice of defaults, anything like that. It goes up even higher. These people all want to talk to everybody. Now, I'm going to forewarn you, there's a lot of drama in the initial vetting of these people. It is a little bit difficult. So if you mail out, say if you did a mail piece of it, just like 1,000, I'm telling you, your phone blows up. We see this all the time when we do it. Yeah. So understanding when you ask for it, you're going to get it. Now, the other way, when we wholesalers, we chase around high equity, it's actually the complete opposite. You get some calls, like it's just not as prolific. So that's, in my opinion, you're looking for people low equity, been there less than 5 years. And ideally, I want to find ones with little to no rehab. So remember, these houses were typically bought off MLS with realtors. And I find usually within 5 years, they don't tend to trash these houses, although sometimes people prove me wrong. That's it, guys. I'm telling you, that's the best way to target. It's not hard. It's easy to do. And here's a tip for you guys. In your state, I promise you, you have an expert. You have someone locally that's all they do is creative financing. Work if you're completely uncomfortable, and especially with your state laws and how to do it, you can work with them. It doesn't skip the lawyer part. Like, don't use that as a shortcut. But I learned creative financing off people I networked in my local RIA. I'm 20 years, I still have a relationship with them. And whenever we get some strange ones, I run it by them, I run it by the lawyer, and we get a consensus of an answer. But subject twos, honestly, the easiest deals, in my opinion, to find. The question is, do you want them? Because there is a lot of drama that goes down with them.
I agree. That's the truth. So that's how you find them. Use any marketing channel. You're going to do pretty well with it. So that's something.
You can pick anything. You can cold call, you can SMS, you can direct mail, you can door knock. They all work, in my opinion, almost equally. It's just which ones you're most comfortable with. So,
and last part of sub twos here are, how do you wholesale subject to? Because I already told you make 80% ROI. Like, people want to buy those things. So you could probably make $3, $4, $5 just putting a deal like that together and just handing it off to a cash buyer that likes it.
Correct. So here's an easy way to understand wholesaling subject twos. Think about this, okay? And if you think about this in this setting, it will make complete sense to you.
Yeah.
The people that buy your wholesale deals, typically the ones that pay the most, what do? They go out and get hard money loans.
Yeah.
Or they get a private loan. Guess what? your equity, you're subject to. So say you have $100,000 loan. It's a gift you got, right? It's got value.
Yep.
You have to price it into the deal. You can usually get them to pay 10, 15% more because you're basically providing them, you've made hard money soft, and then you can put a return on that as well too.
Yeah.
Like, so you can pay the interest arbitrage. So maybe the interest rate you took over was 4.25%, and you give him, like, what are interest rates on hard money these days?
It's
like
crazy.
8 to 12%.
Yeah,
Plus there's
yeah.
points, there's junk fees. You could be the middleman. Just give it to them at 8%. Tell them there's 2 points up front. A point just means if it's $100,000, it's 2 points. There's a $2,000 fee. Now you're collecting fees on, like, it's amazing. You can collect that fee. You can do it on a HUD. You can do it privately, however you want to do it. It's just amazing what you can do with it. So if you think of like a hard money, someone's got to get a loan, you're subject to has value. You still have to underwrite and make sure you do it. And typically they are going to pay more.
Yeah.
So it's easy to do it. I can get real technical here. I don't want to do this on the show because it's, if you have any type of subject to that makes sense, then it's going to have value on the market. Because let me ask you this. Would you rather skip the bank qualifying process or work with the person who owns the home that's in control of the financing that can make your deal go through?
Oh, yeah.
So when we sell these deals, there's various ways to do it. When you talk about like wholesaling them, you want someone that can, hey, they understand, they're taking over the payments, they know what they're getting into, and they go, man, this is so much better than calling Johnny, my hard money guy, because he's brutal. And I get that all the time when we do it. And that's talking about wholesaling a subject to deal. It works well. Guys, if you ever have a deal to buy something where you can take over someone's like note and it makes financial sense, especially in the wholesaling sense, I jump all over them. I love them that way.
I agree 100%. So again, the subject to exit strategies, those are basically wholesaling them. You can rent it out. You can do a wrap, which really quickly.
A wrap's basically when you sell it to a retail customer, they're going to pay top dollar. They'll typically pay 10 to 15% above retail, guys, above what you see on MLS.
So it's
because, it's because they don't qualify for any traditional bank loans. You'd be surprised. There's people that make big, big money that have bad credit.
So basically a wrap is you're taking the mortgage here, you got here, and you kind of wrap it around. But the best explanation kind of with the wrap is you're creating your own loan kind of on that person. You're making arbitrage on the difference between there. And renting it out, you can do a subtail. I get the whole thing. You can even sell the property.
So people always says, well, who would pay 10 to 15% more for a house? I'm telling you, there's executives out there all the time. People have gone through really bad divorces. People who bought ridiculous expensive toys and they didn't pay their bills, but they're still making the big salaries and their credit drops in like the 400s and 500s, but they're still making $50K a month. That's my favorite type of wrap or anything to do. And they're like, listen, and by the way, they will go out into the market and only search for like a creative financing deal like that because they know they can't go to the bank. They know most realtors are going to blow them off. It is the perfect fit. And 9 times out of 10, you don't have to pay these ridiculous 6% realtor fees because most realtors don't understand. They don't appreciate creative financing. They'll work with you and identify a deal, but they'll never, ever put it together. That's where you come into play.
Oh, yeah. So there's the extra strategy. Now we're going to one. That one's probably the most time we're spending because
I love subject to.
They're great. Now, the next part of creative financing, it's not just that, is what are lease options? And we're getting a lot of great comments, totally agree. Wow. What up? Shoot World said, like, what about pre-foreclosures? Again, what I'll tell you with pre-foreclosures is,
I can shed on that.
You talk about they got equity.
So I want you to understand in pre-foreclosure, which basically means someone's behind on their mortgage at some stage, you have to go through your state foreclosure disclosure policies. So somebody who's in distress, in foreclosure, so I can talk about Florida because I know it well, you have to give disclosures to them. You have to explain what their options are. You actually, in the state of Florida, you have to give them 3 days. They have 3 days to get out of a contract. And technically, I give them months. Like you have to give them room. You cannot stress somebody out in
Yeah.
pre-foreclosure. So check what your state local laws on when you deal with somebody in a distressed house that's in pre-foreclosure. That means they've missed a payment or two on their mortgage, and you have to give them space. You have to give them disclosure. Creative financing does not bypass this process. Okay. Us wholesalers, when we come across somebody in foreclosure, I have to give disclosure paperwork, and you have to explain what their rights are, what their options are. You give them like 3 days to review a contract. You advise them to bring it by an attorney. A lot of people go, "What? I'll just do creative financing. I don't have to do all that." Wrong, dude. Like, honestly, you're under more scrutiny when you do creative like financing, because imagine taking over a subject to deal where someone's 6 months behind on the mortgage.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about, and you got to let them know what their options are. So we always tell them to go to the lawyer first. Unfortunately, we let them do the realtor dance, and most realtors just scratch their head and go, "Hey, there's nothing you can do." And then we sit down, then we usually with a bona fide title company explain what the process is going forward. And usually, guys, if you figured out I'm in a funnel here, and usually I'm the last resort option. If any of those other options work, I'm going to be taken out. Well, Rick, why would you do that? Well, you put a contract. If they take those options 2 or 3 months down the road, what are you going to do? Like, and so what are you going to do? Are you going to sue them for performance? You're going to record a memorandum? It's never going to work on somebody in a distressed property. So make sure you understand your disclosure for distressed properties in your particular state. By the way, every state is different how they handle it, seems.
Every state's different. So it's a little harder. A lot of the equity goes up like crazy. So you just got to be careful there. But the next part here is, what are lease options? And that's kind of our bread and butter. That's what we love to do. But these are deals with high equity. These can be any wholesaling deal, right? You're doing regular marketing for wholesaling.
Yeah.
Lease options are within the weeds in there.
So they're going to fall more on the wholesaling side, in my opinion, because
hands down.
On a lease option, you've got to understand.
You don't even have to go after regular ones.
Correct. Well,
you don't really have to go after lease options because
you don't. So these are going to be homeowners in high equity positions. When I say high, 50% or higher. Okay. So first of all, let's explain what a lease option is. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's so confusing." It's literally what the word means.
Yep.
It's a lease and an option. End of story. So
an option to buy.
Well, that's what the option is. So a lease is just a standard rental agreement. Okay. You hear the word rental agreement, lease, they're the same thing. A lease has more of a commercial implication.
We've all leased houses, right?
Correct. Okay. An options are really, really simple. I love options because it is the fundamentals of real estate. An option says, "Hey, Zach, I love your house.
Thank you.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you $10,000 option payment." And you're going, "What the heck is an option payment?" Here's what I'm going to do is I got to get some financial stuff in order, and your house needs a little bit of work. And I know you don't want to do the work, as you said earlier, but what if I gave you 10 grand down, and then basically we strike a price of $200,000, and you give me, can you give me 5 years? And I'll buy it within 5 years.
My house is worth 180. Why is it
so
200,
typically people
right?
they go 5 years. I go, I tell you what,
Yeah.
I can do 4 years. And basically what it means, I'll give you 10 grand. I'll pay you, $1,500 a month. We'll do a rental. So I'll rent. So you get 10,000 up front. I'll rent it for the 4 years. And anytime within that 4 years, I have the option to buy your house for $250,000, period. That's it. And you say, "Well, what happens after 4 years if you don't buy it?" Honestly, Zach, if I screw up and I don't buy it, you keep my 10 grand, you have the house and you can resell it again.
Boom.
So everything's negotiable, the down payment, the terms, the thing, but I now have an option. So for me to perform and perfect my option, which you guys have to understand, is you have to note it in legal record for it to be correct. So if we do it privately, it's now my obligation to make it public.
Yeah.
That's how I now have an equity stake in this property. And now I can do what I want with it. If I don't record it, and I don't speak for all 48 states, on the mainland, I can tell you for most of them, you have to have an equitable interest to sell it. The only way you do it an option is you have to record it and make it public. It protects you. It protects him from him selling the house from underneath of me. And it clearly defines what you have an option on it.
Yeah.
The rental agreement, it's just a rental. The key with a lease option is they got to be separate. There's endless court cases. You see a lot of abuse in this category, and I can see how it happens is you have to clearly have a rental agreement and an option agreement, and the two cannot intersect. So that $10,000 cannot go towards the rental agreement. If you're better off if you have a deposit. When you do that, you should actually, if he requires a $2,000 rental deposit, then that's part of the rental contract. The option has to be separate. The minute you blend those two, you don't have a lease option anymore.
I agree.
You have an owner financing deal, and it falls under a different spectrum. So the advantages of doing the lease options is they go down very fast.
Yeah.
I like tired rental properties. A lot of people that when a renter moves out, they go,
Tired landlords.
So here's how I use, when I started doing lease options is I would call on the rental ads and say, you interested in renting your property? I'm like, oh, perfect. I want to rent it. And then I kind of go a little bit deeper with them. I go, say, what do you need for a deposit to put down? Well, we require $4,000. What if I could give you like $6,000? Listen, I'm willing to do the $6,000. Would you consider, if I'm a really good renter and I pay all my bills on time, would you consider selling me that property at the end of the rental? Is that something you're open to?
Sure.
That's when you just drop the option bomb, like right there. So we build rapport up and we go with that. I love lease options because they're a very simple conversation. And people like lease options. They go, okay, Rick, but whose name is it recorded in? And I'm just like, everything is negotiable. Typically in a lease option is you can make the seller. So if somebody has like a high-end like Airbnb property and you do this strategy, works very well, by the way, is I tell you what, Zach, I'm not going to, typically you're not going to record the deed till you execute your option agreement. So Zach goes, what do I have to lose? This is perfect. I get a rental, and guess what? I'm going to tell him, I'm not going to bug you with all the little repairs. Now, I do have to disclose with him, I'm going to turn around and use that property either for Airbnb or I'm going to turn around and rent it. You cannot lie to these people. You got to tell them what you're going to do it factually, but it goes fast. They have a lot of equity in it. And a lot of times you can ride it out. So $250, I'm secretly hoping it's going to be worth $400 when I'm done with it. Plus, if I'm renting it for $1,200 from him, I'm usually renting it for $2,000. I'm making that $600 to $800 spread. And then at the end, I'm looking for like a six-figure pop. Yeah. This is a little bit longer term play, but man, I'm telling you, on these deals, they go down. I've had them go down in a day or two. People are like, dude, where do I sign up? I want to do that. Because they feel that you're going to be more responsible than the renter, and they feel like you're not going to bug them for every clogged toilet. So a lot of times we go, listen, the first $500 in repair, I just pick up. I'm not going to call you for clogged toilets. And that's it, guys. And then you're just making the payment to them. So I think it's like a win-win. Airbnbs, they work well. Unique houses, tired rental properties, stuff like that. It works well.
It works super well. So next part here, like what are the contracts you need for them? Like lease option contracts. What are your opinions on that?
Guys, I can't make it any simpler. It's a rental agreement and it is an option agreement. Option agreements are really simple. It spells out in the option agreement your future strike price and how much you left for an option payment. So if I leave Zach $1,000 or $10,000, that's reflected in there. Now, I include my $10,000 as a payment. It comes off on my option price. So if it's $250 in 4 years, I owe Zach $240. Okay. And it spells out. And then usually most good exercise option contracts, you give them 90 days notice when you want to execute it. Now, sometimes if you do this really good, say Zach gives me 5 years, and in 1 year, I have an amazing deal to sell it to someone and they're going to give me like $100,000 more. You can execute it before that 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Your worst case scenario, why people like options, why investors like options is if it doesn't work out, I walk away. and I move on.
Mhm.
As long as I so on the rental agreement, if I don't pay on the rental agreement, guess what? I get a 3-day notice and you're out. Like you go through the regular court system
Yeah.
on a regular eviction. So he protects and feels like, okay, I don't have to do the daily management and I already know what my price is. And if this Rick guy doesn't come through, I get the house back. He's going to fix it up a little bit. It'll be in better shape, worth more. Either way, I win. He either buys it for $250, I get the monthly cash flow, or he drops out of it. I keep his 10 grand and I do this all over again. And that's why lease options are so sexy. That's why you hear about them all the time. It's actually a brilliant strategy. I would tell you this strategy's been around since like the 50s, guys. It was not invented in 2008, like 2010. A lot of people like claim it is. It's been around forever. It's a fast and easy way. There's no recording fees other than the option itself. You still run a title search to make sure you got a good, clean property. And that's it, man.
I'm telling you. And then basically how to find lease options, kind of like any other wholesaling, right? Cold calling, trying for dollars.
High equity.
High equity.
Owns more than 5 years, not under. You don't want those. I mean, you can. And then, people always ask, hey, Rick, can I do it from an LLC or corporation? You can, but when you get a private individual, it usually goes down a little bit better because you have a decision maker and you can get it done right there. So,
oh, yeah. That works pretty well. And then obviously here, we can kind of break this down too, but exit strategies, I like just putting someone in there and then you kind of do it. Guys, the benefit of a lease option, guys, is you can make $40,000, $50,000. The benefit of it, people like sell courses on how to do it. They call it like the triple pay net option system. They'll make it all sexy. You get paid in the beginning because that down payment, you make money. You're making cash flow. At the end, at that strike price, you're selling that strike price for a lot more. It's hands down amazing. I love it.
And guys, keep in mind, so here's how a lease option works. So say I give Zach $10,000 down. You want to go out and find a buyer that will give you 15, 20. So that basically replaces your assignment fee. So if I go out, I give Zach 10, I get a buyer to give me 20 down. I just pocketed $10,000. That's basically your wholesale fee. Then you're going to make between $600 and $800 a month over 48 months. What does that come to? Like that's another 30 grand. And then you get the difference on the executed option price. So you have 3 ways to make money on it. Yeah. That's why I will tell you this. I'm old school, guys. Okay. He's new school. I'm old school.
Oh my gosh.
I strongly believe when you do a lease option or even a subject to, and I know a lot of people are going to like get on me about this, you should be positive cash flow from day one unless you're in a strong financial position where you can afford to put down big down payments. Yeah. Okay. So if you have a huge nest egg and you know what you're doing, knock yourself out.
Really
if you're brand new starting out, if I'm doing a lease option and I give Zach 5 grand, you need to get twice that from your new buyer. Yeah, otherwise, so if I give Zach 10 and I only get 5, that means I'm $5,000 in the hole. And you know that property is always going to need some sort of rehab or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my final disclosure on any type of creative financing. You guys got to factor in the cost of rehab on these properties. Unless you know what you're doing and you're seasoned in this business, as a beginner, I strongly advise you taking over a subject to that needs 50 grand in rehab, because I just don't know how you do it without selling that property or put your family's financial portfolio at risk when doing that. So a lot of people like, oh, I gave that guy 20 and I'm getting 10 to move in and I got to put another 15 into it. You're like 35 grand in the hole. I'm all about positive cash flow. I'm telling you, you cannot get hurt when you take positive cash flow. If you want to take some calculated risk and you've been in the business for a while, knock yourself out. But if you're doing your first few creative financing deals, do not go in a negative cash flow position, because how do you make money on that? You got to wait 5 years to get paid. So it's going to work against you. So then you got to calculate your ROI. Now you're getting into a complicated investment. I like simplicity in real estate investing. And as a beginner, you always got to make cash, because not only do I have to prove this to myself, I have to prove it to my wife. I have to prove it to my kids, and try to explain to a family member, I'm pulling 20 grand out of our personal bank account.
Good. I don't like that. Yeah.
But I'm getting 10 back in, and your wife's going to go, or your husband's going to like, what kind of Ponzi scheme are we running here?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you guys, I go from the old school thought. Whatever you take, you should get double down. I see people putting down 20, 30, 40,000. Listen, if you're seasoned and you got money and you want to take the risk, knock yourself out. If you're just starting out, I'm advising against it because it's risky. And I think you're going to get a lot of pressure from your family and you're going to doubt yourself when you do it. I also want you to understand when you're depending on the rents for cash flow, they can change. Okay. I had a lot of subject twos back in 06, 07. And I had to eat some crow on these things, man, because our rents in like the Port St. Lucie area adjusted by 60%. I never saw that coming. Our taxes doubled and insurance went through the roof. So I didn't have a big enough buffer for cash flow and I got hurt because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do the stuff. If I just stuck in a positive cash flow, I wouldn't have been in that predicament. So
I agree. And then, so lease options still work. I love them. You just got to understand the problem with it. Again, we kind of broke it down, like how to pitch these deals. Creative terms, subject to, you're basically taking over the mortgage. Lease option, you're basically taking over maybe a distressed property from the owner side that they don't want to be a landlord anymore from there. I think this is pretty important to break over though. Like what makes a good subject to deal? Like what's a good criteria? Like what's the good avatar for a subject to seller?
Listen, guys, I like to take stuff over that doesn't need a lot of rehab.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I'm into doing deals. So if you're going to go in a fix and flip environment, you know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
So many times, like I've seen people do creative financing. They go, well, what if we just like replace that window and we do this? And guys, like 2022 stuff adds up. It adds up really quick. And I don't like the unknown in the profit area. And I will tell you, you've got to factor in the repair. I get so excited when I take a subject to a lease option and it's perfect. You know why it's perfect? Because if you say, hey, would you live there? That means you have a huge customer base and you have so many options. The problem, once they need like 40, 50 grand in rehab, like how are you going to get that much money up front to recoup it without actually liquidating and selling the asset? And so I'm just telling you, watch out. I'd switch more to wholesaling if it needs massive rehab. Even if there's little to no equity, it needs a lot of rehab. Somebody has to put the money in it to make it work. And I don't want anyone to get hurt on that. It really limits your options unless you like doing a bankroll and stuff.
I agree. So the next part is like the perfect avatar if we are going to deal with like a lease option, right?
Lease options, just looking for people with like high equity and clean homes.
You can't force it, right? You can't force it.
Yeah, no, it's remember guys, they have to sell the property to you really as a last resort. That way, you know, you're doing a good creative financing. If you're calling them 15 times to get like a basic answer, like what's the balance of your mortgage, that's what you're going to expect the next 5 years.
Oh yeah.
And you got to watch it. So I would advise against that. The other thing is you need to look for positive cash flow. What do I mean by that? If the mortgage payment is 800, and guys, you have to ask what's included with your mortgage payment. So it's called PITI, which is just an acronym for principal, interest, which is the primary mortgage. The T stands for taxes. The I stands for insurance. Most people that put down anyone who puts down really less than 15, 20%, they usually include it in the mortgage.
Yeah.
And until they demonstrate after, like 5 years before they can start paying their own, because the bank doesn't want them to get behind on it. So once we have that, you determine what the rent is. How did we find the rent? Use Rentometer. You can use Trulia. There's a million ways to search for it. Call your local realtor. I like to call for rent signs in the area. That's the best way to determine it, and determine what the spread is. So if it's 800, rents are 1,200, that's a $400 spread. That works. I don't like anything less than 350 because there's a lot of what ifs that can happen.
Yeah.
Remember, you can have a vacancy month. How are you going to make up that 1 month's rent? And you got to make that payment. So 400 is ideal. Anything north of that, obviously you can do very well with it. remember, guys, creative financing, particularly in subject to, it's more, the cash flow is just as important as the price. I hear a lot of people like, don't worry about what the end price is. I'm like, yeah, you need to worry a little bit about that, because at some point you do have to sell it. So it's so important that you have, I see a lot of times people, well, it's 800 and I'm renting it for 950. And I just go, why would you do that? Like, it's, unless you have some sort of strategy, there are some special circumstances you can make it work. But for a newbie, for $150, guys, it will not cut the mustard. I'm telling you, you're going to wind up in a really bad position. So the more room you have in cash flow, the better off. Period.
I agree. So next part is like seller financing. So that's kind of the third part here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
so seller financing are people who flat out own homes outright. There's rarely any type of lien or mortgage on it.
Now, you could do a lease option with someone who owns a house outright. So.
Absolutely. But it's, some people just, I find a lot of the old school guys. So a lot of these people I find own 10 or more properties.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're like, okay, you can take those two. And so he wants nothing to do with it. So say he sells it to you $100,000, say you're giving him 10 grand down, whatever it is, and there's a $90,000. So the seller financing, I find these people, he or she, a lot of she's out there, very powerful. They are going to create a mortgage. They are going to want to pick out a lawyer 9 times out of 10, and they're going to want to record it to protect their interest in the property. Yeah. And that's it. It's really that simple. The really good thing about seller financing is they're clean. You can use any title company. There's no strings attached to it. It's a black and white. It is almost like working with a bank without any of the fees. You just, once again, the deal's got to work. If you try to force it to work, you're typically getting a bad deal.
I agree. And now we kind of broke this down a little bit, but like a subject to example is we're going out here, we're taking over the mortgage, 600 is the mortgage, and we can rent out, make some profit. Lease option, we're kind of sandwiching it again. Mm-hmm. It's where I can get a payment for 1,000, maybe rent it out for 1,400, but they take over most of it, and that's pretty good profit. Now, the last most important question we have is creative finance legal? And I think that's a big question we always get, right? Is it legal?
It's 100% legal, but what you got to understand, there are circumstances where you can find yourself in hot water. Yeah. So the biggest one that I want to protect you against is if the seller is in distress. Yeah. Meaning the property's in some stage of foreclosure. You need to make sure, just like your regular wholesaling business, you're giving them adequate time, you're giving them options, and you are giving them disclosure. Okay. Also understand, when a property is in foreclosure, I'm not going to ever say a bank's hyper sensitive to that property now, but they do pay attention. Now, keep in mind, the banks never own these mortgages. That's all on Wall Street, but they're servicing them, and they love to make money, sending notices, getting lawyers involved. So you have a responsibility to make a timely answer. So if it's any type of foreclosure, I'm not going to say take your time, but give them the time they need to work through it. It has to be 100% the absolute last resort when they're in foreclosure. And guys, you want to know the real truth, the difference in all these options. You might think you know, like, the difference in the options. Here's the reality of it. It's based on the customer situation. Okay. If a gal or a guy owns a property, they own like a lot of property, and they go, listen, I'll just sell you this one. I can make you an okay deal, but I'll give you financing. And they do a seller financing. If he wants to do seller financing, I'm not going to shove a lease option down his throat. Okay. Same on subject to, it either fits or it doesn't, guys. Yeah. And I'm just telling you, these strategies we're explaining to you, they are customer dictated. It's not about you saying, this is what's best for you. Some people freak out when they hear like a lease option. They're like, I don't understand. I heard some bad things about it. Yeah. Well, we just do it. It's just a seller financing. But if you want, we just record a mortgage. And while you doing that, you look impartial, like, listen, whatever works for you, seller, I want to help you out. And if you always go from a position to help the seller out instead of trying to force them down. So listen, if you took a course and you go, okay, I was told I have to do it this way, and your seller is saying, I don't want to do it that way, either it fits or it doesn't. You can't force them into a lease option when the guy goes, listen, I just want to create a note for this and be done with it. No, but a lease option. What you're saying is the lease option is better for me than you, and this is how we're going to do it. And you're ultimately going to probably lose the deal, or you're really going to tick them off, he or she.
Yeah.
And so I would say the situation dictates it with the customers. Give me 100 customers, I'll give you 100 different ways to buy a property. It's just the truth of the matter. And there's general categories. We're talking about creative financing when the wholesaling doesn't work and you go, okay, let's try one of these routes. Either they have a lot of equity or they got very little.
Yeah.
And if you know which way, okay, let me point the needle this way and shoot it over their bow to see what they say.
Yeah.
That's it.
It works really well for us, and we love it. So creative finance is legal. You just got to be careful of your own states and laws and things like that. But guys, that's the ultimate creative financing guide. Now,
so here's the last thing we need to add.
Yeah.
Remember I told you in the beginning, the biggest struggle I had was being a wholesaler. Like, so how do I pivot and have this creative conversation talk?
Yeah.
First of all, a lot of it's going to happen naturally when you start qualifying the lead. Oh, I owe too much money. I'm behind on the mortgage. And you're like, okay, you start trying to go, okay, this might work. This might work. You just have to hear them out, take in all the data. A lot of times when I started out, I didn't even know which way to go with it. I would just take it. I go, listen, simple line. This is when I was completely clueless. Okay. It still works, guys. Mr. Seller, I'm looking at buying your house cash. I've established it's not going to work. I get it. You've explained the situation. You owe too much or it's in foreclosure. Would you be possibly open to a creative solution? And just by doing that, like scrunchy face, like I'm not sure if, and they're going to answer one or two ways every time. What kind of scam is that? What kind of crap is that? Yeah. Or, well, tell me more because I'm out of options. And when I hear that, I'm like, okay, now you just got to kind of work. Remember, we're talking about conversations and not scripts.
Yeah.
And that's when you go, okay, let me go over this. So you bought the house on this date for this amount. You got a mortgage. You've been in here 2 years. You're 2 months behind on payment. How much is your monthly payment? And you grab all the data and go, listen, let me tell you what, let me get all this stuff. Let me go work on it. Let me do some verification. And can I meet up with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? And I'm going to go over a solution I think is going to be very helpful to you. Yeah. Does that work for you? Guys, that's how I started out doing it. I had no idea how to fix these people's problem. They just wanted help. And you can hear it in sellers. Listen, if you do this job right, sellers will hug you. They'll thank you. They will bring you gifts. I'm telling you, you save people by being in real estate investing. I love creative financing because, guys, just think of it. You're a wholesaler. You're just putting another tool in your belt, and you got to have it. If you ever met a handyman that didn't have a screwdriver, a Phillips head, a drill, a hammer, I don't know, a pipe wrench.
Yeah.
That's all I'm telling you is like, you guys are really good at wholesaling and we get you started in it. I promise you, you do this, you're going to have a deal that comes across you. You're going to find a probate where they have this mortgage left. And they're like, they go, listen, I just want my 10 grand out of it. Guess what? You can go out and raise a little bit of 10 grand and buy like $150,000 house. Yeah. And that's the exciting part about it. Cause you can use creative financing within your wholesaling business too. So you can do internal financing while you either, get the house for sale or whatever you need to do.
I agree.
So
you blew Olivia's mind.
Guys, I love creative financing. It's a lot of fun. People make it like it's so difficult and so hard. A lot of times it's getting to understand the laws in your state of what you can do. I'm going to give you one final disclosure here.
Oh, let's see what you got.
Okay. The tricky part in creative financing, and I'm just telling you, most people aren't going to disclose this to you. Outside of 100% pure seller financing and lease options, subject to does have challenge with title companies. I don't like, you can do this all. I've done enough deals. I'm telling you right now, typically you have to find a title company that is either owned by an investor or is just doesn't care. Yeah. Because I'm going to tell you, there's only 2 or 3 insurance companies out there. 9 times out of 10, they will not underwrite a deal where there's an existing mortgage where it's not paid off.
True.
I know owners of title company, Old Republic, a lot of them will not. Now, if they do, they're going to write an exception to that. And that's a risk in the title. And that freaks out some buyers. Are there ways? I've heard a lot of people like solving it. If you think you're just going to show up your title company and shove it in your average title company, I'm telling you, it doesn't work that way. You got to find the right one, and it takes a lot of work. But once you establish it, you can work through. I'm telling you, it is the biggest challenge of subject twos because I've fought all over the country, especially here in Florida. They're highly sensitive to it, and Old Republic does not like it.
They don't. So we're gonna
That's it.
ask here-
That's the one caveat no one will ever tell you about when you go through anyone's training. It's just a sticky point, and I get it. It is a creative. So they're like, why aren't you paying off the mortgage? Underwriters are black and white people that process numbers all day.
Agreed.
And they want to eliminate 100% risk. You can't with an existing mortgage. Now, I know there are title companies done it. I've done them before, but I'm just telling you, I did not do it in the first shot. It took me 10 or 12 shots across the bow.
I agree. So right here, we're getting some questions. Definitely going to watch this again. You're blowing people's minds. Markeem says, man, I got to give respect to you both, you and Zach, for going live every day. Brothers just know you two are highly respected to many. Appreciate that. Means a lot.
Anybody go more live than us?
There's probably are.
Oh, well, I got nothing better to do.
Whatever. There's people that go live more than us, but like, who cares? We don't charge for the information.
It's not a competition. Actually, the more information you guys can get.
But we don't go live to sell you, of course.
I don't have anything to sell you.
Well, we got freewholesaling.com. It's a free course.
It's a free course. That, by the way, anybody can download and is 100% transparent.
Oh, yeah. Olivia says, now I'm not so confused anymore. Big thank you, of course. Ryan says, thank you for all the value you're dropping here. Awesome. What's up, guys? Thank you. Thumbs up. Get those likes up. Let's get it. Quick question here. If a deal is 180K, rents through Section 8, is rentable, lifted, or able to get out of the lease? Wait.
If a deal is 180K, where's 100K? Rents through Section 8, and rent is able to be lifted?
It depends. Yeah, usually you can get out. It depends on I'll tell you, read the lease. I can't.
Everything's going to be dictated by the lease.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, if I got to get rid of the lease, I just go to the tenant and.
You got to read the lease. Like it's black.
Most people that sell a property with a lease, they're selling it because they're having a difficult time with the tenant. 80% of the time. So most of the time you can approach the tenant, find out the last time they paid and go, listen, I'm going to wind up evicting. I can either pay the lawyer or pay you. Do you want to work something out?
That's it.
And that's how I try to do it. So you have to honor the lease, guys, because if it gets to a court, they're just going to look what's in writing, and that's it. They don't care about your story.
True. Love your TV setup. We got the monkey. Everyone knows what monkey that is. You got it.
If you don't look it up,
You
figure it out.
Superb advice. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sam Smith says you have to pay for Google Voice. Sam, no,
you shouldn't. I've had
you
Google Voice forever.
They have 3 or 4 accounts. It's free. This is a funny question. Great question though, Frederick. I appreciate you asking. But how do you do a sub 2 if the probate into negative 49% equity?
I know exactly what he's talking about. That's going to be a reverse mortgage. Nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Again, reverse mortgage, in my opinion, are predatory loans that banks give out.
Yeah.
And when the person passes away, they want you to drag your feet as long as possible because they're hitting you with monthly fees and they're eating into the equity and they know there's very little left. So if it's negative, I promise you it's a reverse mortgage and it doesn't work. The only thing you can do is do a short sell, and you want to work with someone to negotiate that. Reverse mortgages are, I think they're extremely predatory and they're terrible. So there's very, very little money ever left in them unless someone just took out the reverse mortgage and then they died 3 months later. You might have a shot, but most reverse mortgages take 2 to 3 years to be paid off after somebody passes away because they take advantage of the family not understanding the process, and they just every month there is a bill due on a mortgage. I don't care what type it is.
I agree.
Even a home equity line of credit. I can sit here and debate you all day on that. Banks are not stupid. They know how to get in your back pockets, and just stay away from reverse mortgages. They will pop up a lot, but there's not a whole lot you can do.
Of course, I'm getting some other questions. Why I don't agree with some guys. This is a creative finance video. Question on cold calling. What happens when a seller calls the number back? Does it cold call the dialer? The VA has to answer it. Depends on the dialer. It should go back to you and have a voicemail. Getting some great question is Albert. You go ask that boy. Totally agree. I appreciate it. Awesome. Getting some great questions here. Brandon, when getting involved with creative financing is subject to, if any missed payments, will your credit be affected personally?
No,
No.
you're not on record with it. So
Yeah.
the people that run,
But you will lose your trust with the seller, which I think is worse.
which is way,
Way
much worse.
worse.
So your credit is managed between the powers that be, which is going to be TransUnion, Equifax. I forget the third one. They're all in bed together with the banks, in my opinion. So credit's used to manipulate people, to drive an economy. For some reason, they think credit's more important, but that only works to people stuck in the 9 to 5 mentality. I much rather you have $100,000 in the bank with a low credit score than an 800 credit score with $3,000. So, but somehow it is used as a pivotal point if you're going to be able to pay the mortgage, which still blows me away.
Grass, what title company we use? West Palm, Port St. Lucie. I would tell you to look it up yourself. We like KPC titles pretty good. They do assignments. Next here is my grandparents did a reverse mortgage in the house we live in. How can I save the house from the reverse mortgage taking it from us? Jorge, your grandparents signed it. Like,
you got to get that lien.
It's not like there's an evil villain going out here stealing your deal. Like
you got to get a payoff for the mortgage, or you got to get it sold. Those reverses. I mean, I guess there's a way to do it, but like honestly,
your grandparents signed. You're making it seem like they're stealing the deal. If your grandparents
signed it, they signed it. So a solution, if you have grandparents or parents that need help with that, if you can set up a home equity line of credit, you have options with it. So a line of credit, you get $50,000 or $100,000. It doesn't mean you have to spend it, but like say your parents or your grandparents get sick, we all want to take care of our family. The idea is if you spend 50 grand in like medical bills or a nursing home, you at least have the option of not losing the house if you do it, and you can figure out, move money from here. You could refinance the house if you wanted to. So I'd rather you refinance or get a HELOC on a house. Reverse, man, they are so one-sided. I don't even know how they're legal.
Get out of those.
They take complete advantage of it. I hate them.
Yeah. Steve, great tip. Appreciate it. Jeremy, get them likes up. I'm telling you guys. Oh, yeah. Land contracts are your friends. I love it, guys. Love me some subject to sandwich deals.
It is a good sandwich.
Oh, my
I'm
gosh.
hungry, man. I haven't had a PBJ
right.
in a
Call
while.
of Duty or PUBG, that's not... No, because remember, when you level up, it gets easier.
What?
We're not going to break this down, but you're kind of at the base level every single time, so I'd not say... Caleb... We're getting a podcast with Caleb and Ryan. But hey, guys, if you sell a property on seller financing land contract and the buyer stops paying you but declares bankruptcy short after, who gets to keep the property? The purchase because of bankruptcy?
Let me read it again. So, guys, I'm not a lawyer. Like, I don't practice law.
If the buyer stops paying, the seller is going to take the property owner.
Who's declaring?
I mean, the seller is going to take the property over most likely.
So the bankruptcy absolves the person of the debt, but the lien is not cleared and still attached to the property. So the bankruptcy move, so you guys know, it's typically used to stall foreclosures and stuff like that. But so say you have a tenant that files bankruptcy. Well, they include everything under the sun in it.
Yeah.
It basically gives them 90 days to kind of breathe, figure stuff out, sometimes 6 months to a year. But the reality is it doesn't wipe them clean of it. It just wipes them clean of you getting a judgment against them. So bankruptcy does not wipe out mortgages. It just absolves them of the debt, but the lien still stays on the house. So when you hear everyone doing these bankruptcy moves, it's just it's a technique in like real estate when they do that. So it's a lot of people do it to buy time, particularly on a foreclosure, because if a property is going to auction and they have a legal filing of a bankruptcy, they actually have to stop it. But you actually have to do it in time. It's hard to do it the day of or like a day or two before.
Oh yeah. Sub 2 deal says plenty of money to be made and no equity. Interesting channel. Sub 2 deals. That's very niched out, but I bet
I like it.
That's cool. I like that. I gotta go check that channel out. Oh yeah, I love it. Salute, DB, salute. I love it. Let's get it. PBC, this boy, he's been in the comments, he's been in the trenches defending us when some people have been saying mean things.
Who would say mean things?
I know he's been in the trenches. He's been out there going nuts. That's all I'm gonna say for now.
You know what, guys? Is that the fact is,
I love it.
Since we don't sell anything, I physically don't ask anybody on the channel for money. It gives me and Zach the unique perspective to speak clearly, and you can call it biased or want, but like my fight is I'm a wholesaler. This is what I do. So all the topics we talk about and stuff like that, I don't need everyone to agree with me. I've learned getting everyone to agree with me is just a waste of my time. But we go out, we represent everybody here. And the fact is, we're transparent because I don't sell coaching courses. I've sold products in the past. I've told you, but like even when I sold products, they were like a couple $100 and every guru bought them and they used them. So
I'm just telling you guys.
Transparency. Like that's
transparency. So who we got on? We got some creative financing questions from Dylan. Dylan, what is up?
I don't hear him. You hear him?
His thing's muted, but he'll pop it back up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Dylan got a lot younger.
Hello, can you hear me?
They get younger?
Oh,
He just shaved.
He got a haircut.
There we go. How you doing?
Do you have a beard?
I shaved.
Oh yeah, man.
And a goatee.
And he got a whiteboard.
That's tight,
Right.
man.
Yeah, first time I've gone clean shaven, and
It feel weird, doesn't it?
yeah, in about 2 years I trimmed it all off.
You look like
it's
10
crazy,
years
man.
younger.
I feel the wind on my face. It doesn't feel right.
You got to get to the
Zach's quote up there.
Oh my gosh, that's cool, man.
All right. I love it. What quote needs to get up there?
Man, to get results that others don't, you have to do what others won't. I know you said that I forget the guy, the running back for the Kansas City or for the Bengals.
Icky Johnson's got that
Icky
quote.
Johnson, yeah. But you brought it to me, man. So I got Zach Ginn on the wall. So Icky Johnson, great on you, but I got Zach Ginn on the wall.
Awesome, man. So what creative finance questions you got? We'll love to help.
Perfect. So the first one I got, I'm talking to a seller. Her husband, unfortunately, just passed away over the holiday season. And so she's living in the house. He was the only one on the title. She was not on the title, but she was married to him. He has no heirs. And so it has just begun the probate process. Also, it was in pre-foreclosure in 2021. In mid or late 2021, they did a loan mod. And so they have a new loan in place. They're not in pre-foreclosure, but they have a fairly high mortgage now, mortgage payoff. So my question is, she wants to sell. I have a good rapport with her. She just doesn't think that she can sell until it completes the probate process. And do you know if there's any opportunity that I'd be able to lock this deal up, maybe from a creative finance solution, especially since she doesn't have a ton of equity now? It's kind of a twofold. It's a probate question, and also since there's a low equity, I'm thinking maybe that there may be a creative solution. And if there is there anything that I can do in the near term to secure this deal? Because once this goes through the probate process, it's going to go on everyone's probate list. She's going to get, blasted with calls. Right now, she's not getting reached out to by very many people at all. Really only me, from what she's told me.
Let me take the first part. And this is probably the best advice I can give you. So if you guys are listening to me about probates, God knows I love them. I will hands down tell you 100%, you do not have to wait till a probate's done to buy a house. Let me repeat that.
He's in Florida too.
I know. And I'm in Florida. You do not have to wait till a probate is finalized to buy a piece of real estate out of that probate. So since you're in Florida, this is a little bit Florida specific, but it works in most states. There's a few exceptions. Number one is they've already opened up the probate, right? Have they or no? They haven't yet.
She has contacted a probate attorney. I don't know what stage it is in that, but I know it's very early on.
So when a probate is opened, so particularly in the state of Florida, a lot of times when most people's biggest asset is their house, it's their biggest wealth. They don't, if they don't have a lot of stocks, bonds, a lot of financial stuff, each state builds what they call like an exemption for probate. So all states have different thresholds. So I believe in the state of Florida, it's either, I want to say it's close to 500,000 for a single individual, and a married couple. I think it goes up to 750. They've made some changes, obviously, with the cost of real estate. If the house is under that threshold, I'm going to tell you, filing the probate is beyond simple. So in the state of Florida, they file so you're saying it was only filed under, the title was only under his name, right?
Correct.
Okay. Was it their homestead? Was the house their homestead? Can you look in the tax records and look it up? So in the state of Florida and every other state, it's called a homestead exemption, where you get a cap on your tax rate, and it allows you to deduct like the first $50,000 of your tax base to incentivize people to stay in their home, so when they get older, they can afford it. So you want to look that up. If the house is in a homestead exemption, then basically you have to consult an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice here, everyone, but they can do a summary administration and pass the house on. Now, typically, both the husband and wife are on the title, and it goes very quickly, usually within 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
So you kind of beat the whole probate process by doing that. The key with the probate is if you can get the contract locked in first, you're in control. The problem is if you let her open a probate, the attorney's going to run gatekeeper on you. So remember that girl you got to date in high school, and she had that other friend that wouldn't let you talk to her? That's what the attorney's going to do to you. He's going to try to block you. He's going to try to get her the highest and best offer. In the state of Florida, that's not a requirement. So even if a probate's open, say it's already with the attorney, is if I strike a contract with the seller, okay, the problem right now is, the question is she legally able to sign for the contract or not? I think she is, but I'm not an attorney. She's not on title.
Since she's not on the title, yeah.
But she's probably going to be the
He
PR.
has no other heirs.
Did she say he had a will? You need to ask if they have a will.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously,
she said that he did have a will. I asked if they had a will, but she said that, I forget who she consulted, but basically that his will was not valid for some reason. It wasn't.
I find that hard to
really
believe.
her response.
Like even an invalid will, the courts will look at it to see what their intent was. Yeah. So the idea is they're probably married a long time. She should be the direct line for the heir. So if you enter in a contract, or even you wait till it's probate, is once the probate opens, remember the house is basically part of a probate. So a probate would cover cars, stocks and bonds, portfolios, anything like that. Your real estate's just one piece of it. So look at it as like this big conglomerate. And you go, hey, listen, we just want to pull this piece of real estate out and get it sold. Why would the probate want to do that for the estate? Because there's cost. So if she kept that out, say the probate took a year or two, if it has a mortgage, she has to pay it. If it has utilities, power, electric, the heat, the cold, whatever, you got to do it. Also, you have taxes, you have insurance, you got to maintain the lawn. All this stuff eats up the estate. So the court's built in. You can basically file a petition to liquidate the asset. The attorney has to do it. I find that attorneys will only do it if you ask them to do it. And here's the best part is, Dylan, you can't ask for it. You have to instruct your seller to do it. They file a motion to sell the property. They present the contract. A judge signs off on it. And what happens is, say the house sells for $100,000. That $100,000 now goes into the estate of Jane Doe until the probate's finalized. Guess what? You can do what you want with the house. Her equity's not being eaten into, hurricane season, all this other stuff coming up, all the stress and anxiety, and you move on with your life. Why do lawyers not tell you about this? It's about money,
Money,
baby.
yeah.
Because I've never had a lawyer volunteer to do this. So once you have a contract, then you have to coach your seller as if she wants to do it and she wants to get rid of it. Sometimes they want to wait till the end. I have one right now. We're waiting 2 years till the probate's done because her attorneys talked her into it. Okay, that's fine. I'll wait.
Mhm.
I mean, it's going to be worth a
Wow.
fortune to me and I'm not doing any of the upkeep and I have a valid contract. So I don't want to do it that way, but if you guys want to do it that way, I'll play by your rules. So if you do the contract before she goes into probate, the only thing you can be challenged on is can she legally sign for the contract? Honestly, I think you're doing the right thing. If you get a pain in the butt attorney or a judge says she wasn't valid, odds are if you open up a probate, she's going to be the PR anyways. She would be directly in line. So I think you have a valid one there. So honestly, guys, do not wait till a probate's done because then it's fair game to the rest of the world, realtors, other investors. The deed's going to change hands. It's going to be tickled on everyone's desk and you are going to be behind the 8 ball. Then when someone asks her, you're buying 100,000 and she's getting offers at 220, they're going to validate your position and you are going to be kicked to the side. Does that answer your question on the probate part at least? Okay. So let's move forward to the math.
It does. Can I?
Yeah.
How do you put the that into the contract as far as the sale date? If you don't know the end date, do you just put the
on or
closing date
before,
subject to probate?
on or before, and just put like you could put October or December. That way you don't have to chase her around for extensions. It's got to be what she's comfortable with, Dylan, ultimately. She might like, can we set it for 6 months and then look at it again? So how most contracts state, if you enter into a valid contract, you want to leave a deposit and you want to get a letter of earnest money deposit, is if she can't perform it in 6 months, most contracts have an exception. If they didn't clear title, the contract doesn't go away. But you ultimately always want the seller's consent to extend a contract. So instead of doing like 90 days, which is probably not going to be done in 90 days, put it out 6 months, 9 months, or even 12. Do it this year and put it in there. That way you don't have to chase it around while you're chasing other leads and doing it that way. You've got to explain it to her. Go, listen, I don't know how long the probate process is going to take, but here's what we do. So I don't have to bug you every month. Why don't we just set it for 6 months or 9 months down the road? I'll keep checking in on you. And it says on or before. So if we get it done sooner, we can clear it up. We can close right away. And that's how you explain it to them on that part. Make sense?
Love it.
So let's get into the math of it. What does she owe on the property? Roughly.
We're supposed to have that call tomorrow to figure out, but she said roughly 300,000. She thinks.
Okay. What's the property worth?
Roughly 400,000.
Okay. You got a deal there. Like, so it's, and then you got to figure out what the monthly payment is.
You know how to use an amortization calculator, right? And you can kind of do your own math from there.
Well, when they do loan mods, it's not pretty.
No, but if he's doing it for himself.
Correct.
So
So
he's going to see if it's a sub 2, whatever, if he has to wrap it.
yeah. So look at what she's paying. Identify if taxes and insurance are part of that. Okay. And then you got to figure out like, okay, what's the monthly cash flow on this property in the open market? That will let you determine what kind of cash flow you can get out of it. And then you need to look at what it's going to need for repairs. Every one of these properties, when someone's in probate, they always need some sort of repairs, updating, and they can get sizable in some of these houses. So you want to put all the numbers together, and it's a constant verification, and then you can figure out which way you want to do it. You could potentially sell it. You can wholesale a subject to with it and take your money. You might decide, go, hey, listen, if we could get her like a chunk of money, I could do cash flow. I could do the end. Part of it is what you can get out of the deal. And then really what fits best for you, Dylan. If you're just looking to generate cash now and move on, then it's probably best that you get the property sold. If you can find a creative way to hold on to it and do stuff like that, the sky's the limit. But to each his own. Like if you need money to keep the marketing machine and stuff to go, maybe selling it's the best option. Everybody's in different positions. That's the really cool thing about creative financing. You leverage what you can do to make it work. So Was she on the mortgage or not? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I
Okay.
didn't
So
ask.
that's another important part. If she's not on the mortgage,
I just know that she's not on the title.
so it's very, so in the state of Florida, it's very odd to see a loan for a married couple without them being on title with a mortgage.
Yeah.
Because in the state of Florida, like if I
Mhm.
decide to sell my house tomorrow, I'm required to get my wife's consent on the deed. Like there's no way around it. You
Mhm.
just can't. They just want to make
Mhm.
sure people aren't manipulating stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see how this one,
Could have been a prenup.
it still requires some sort of documentation.
Yeah.
It's designed so like people can't screw each other over. So I would go deep into your verification process and get all the numbers. The sooner you can get them, the better you can make a decision. And then look at the house and see what it needs and look what the market will dictate for it. And you can either stick on the wholesale cash outside, maybe even a wholesale, or maybe you can keep it, do some creative cash flow and figure out what kind of monies would need to be put down and what would need to be get back. The fact that she doesn't have a lot of equity in it, like some of these deals I can take down for 10 or 20 grand and they're happy. They're like, you give me that amount of money, just take over the mortgage. I don't have to deal with any of this crap. Yeah. You're still going to have to work with her on getting
Yeah.
the title corrected though. So the most important piece right now is to get a contract and get her agreement.
Can I
Okay.
use your purchase and sale agreement from freewholesaling.com for that?
You can use any of them. Like honestly, you just want to disclose everything up front. So here's how you can write it. So figure out in your magical way what price you can get her to agree to. So, and once again, only you know that because you see the house. Between $300,000 and $400,000, there can be a lot. Like, is the house outdated? Does it need a new roof? It doesn't take much to have $50,000,
Yeah, no,
$60,000
I saw
repairs.
pictures. They had it listed in 2021. They had it listed and never sold, but the house is beautiful. It's in
So
great
why
condition.
didn't it sell? You got to ask that question too. In this market,
Yeah.
especially in
Usually
Florida.
price.
Yeah. So look at the price it was listed for.
Probably insane.
And make sure and you know what, Dylan, at the end of the day, this house might
Mhm.
only be worth 310, 320, which will answer all your questions. Because then you could just give her a little bit of money up front and then you could do the creative strategies that we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Okay. You just got to make sure the math works. So if the payment's $1,500 a month, you got to find out what a typical renter or someone that was going to pay for a self-financing deal, what they would pay for that property. And I can tell you in Florida, there's very
Yeah,
few
we
places
spoke.
under 2K. Very few.
Oh
Quality
yeah,
house.
yeah. I know. I see it. I see it. We spoke for over 45 minutes yesterday, and the way the conversation left was, okay, well, how much do you need to how much you wanting to get out of the house? And it was, I don't know my mortgage. I don't know what's left on it. And I said, okay, well, can you grab that? And it was, hey, I don't know where that is. Let me give you a call back Friday, and I'll grab it, and then we can figure it all out. And
So
that's
how old is she, Dylan?
unfortunately the conversation.
How old is she?
I mean, she's not old. I'd say she's in her. She's pretty young, in her early 60s.
Okay. So you guys know when you get someone who's older and they're all by themselves, especially if somebody passed away, I usually invite a family member to come in.
Yeah.
I'll encourage an attorney. I just don't want it to come back and blow back on me, especially when they're like, you can give me 50 grand, it's worth 250. I'm like, we might need to bring some help in. Like I don't want to be the guy on the front page of the paper
Yeah.
because that's what gives us all a bad rap. So just kind of make sure. I don't think the numbers are out of line, but like the more you give her options. So what you need to do is just help her and walk her through the process.
Mhm.
And it's a pen in the pad and go, okay, I'm going to walk through a
Okay.
series of questions. The easiest way to verify her mortgage is usually get a copy of the most recent statement, and on the back,
Yeah.
it'll have an 800 number. It'll have a payoff. And what I do is I take that
Mhm.
to the title company. Most title companies want a contract, but if you've got a good relationship with the title company, they will help you get a payoff. That payoff on there will have any monies in arrears, what the monthlies do, everything you need. That typically takes 5 to 7 days to get. So you want to jump on that right away.
Okay.
They can tell you whatever they want. I've
Okay.
had
But I can
people-
only get that by taking her statement.
Correct. And then usually your title company will have what they call an authorization form so they can get a payoff for them. Get that authorization form. Usually they'll send it to you in a PDF and have her sign it for you. And then what they'll do is give the bank the loan number, the property address, and it's basically okaying that she's requesting a payoff. Remember, requesting a payoff doesn't mean you need to pay it off. It just tells you for fact, it's like an estoppel letter and tells you how much is owed on the property. So you just got to gather that fact. I would sit down there with a pen and pad and just walk her through it. And then at the end, go, listen, I tell you what, you can make a decision if you want to write a contract there. It's not uncommon to renegotiate these types of contracts because it's dependent on the debt on it. You got to find out, is she making payments on it or not? Because it's just going to wind up in foreclosure again, and then it gets really messy. So ask when the last payment she's made, how much it was, and fill out the entire checklist and go through it. And then that will dictate, as I said, these deals.
Thank you guys so much. I have.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. There is a delay. I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure because I have one last question. Different seller, different situation. She is living in a house, wants to sell, already bought a new house, and she's doing the renovations on it. She's nearly complete, but doesn't want to agree on a contract or an agreement until she's moved into the new house. She has less than 2 months estimated time frame until she can move in. But I have built really good rapport. I want to know, do you think that there is anything that I can do to propose to the seller why it would be beneficial for her to put an agreement in place and we can put the closing date out in advance? I've tried floating that idea, but she hasn't been very receptive to it. She basically doesn't want to have an agreement in place until she moves into her new house because she's doing the rehab and some of the repairs have drug on longer than expected, which is fine. I just want to, see if we can get an agreement in place, to secure my interest in the property, and then we can put the closing date out in advance. But I haven't been able to find a way to propose it to where she sees a benefit in that. Do you have any ideas?
The only benefit is you're not going to force somebody. Some people are just like in their head. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be. You just got to offer, write it in the notes. Seller agrees to sell or buyer agrees to buy 7 days after seller agrees to vacate property.
Here's what I would do. I would say she's got some sort of reservation and she doesn't.
Why didn't
she's saying it, but she's not telling you the root of the cause. Somebody probably screwed her in the past, dude.
Yeah.
And so if you can write a soft contract, let me ask you.
Well, she said that she doesn't want to feel like her back is up against the wall and
Correct.
She has to move out of the house now because it's put in place and her new house isn't complete.
So here's where you have to communicate the beauty of working with a wholesaler like yourself. I wouldn't call you a wholesaler, but we're just talking amongst this live. Is the beauty is I'm not moving into the house. So I have flexibility. At the end of the day, Dylan, if you did a contract with her and she canceled 30 days into it, would you sue her? Honestly, would you sue her?
Oh, hell no. No, of course not.
That's what she's scared you're going to do.
Definitely not.
There's a lot of people write contracts and they go, I'm going to get a lawyer and I'm going to make you perform. You write what you call a soft contract. At the end of the day, they have to show up to the closing table to sell the property. So you have nothing to lose at this point. Write a soft contract. Give her an option to get out of the contract. Give me 2 weeks notice, you get out of the contract. I don't like writing that, but you want to keep other investors from writing contracts with her. What do you got to lose?
Exactly. What's
because
a soft
if
contract?
Another investor comes and offers her a higher amount and go, listen, I'm going to give you the respect. Tell me, sit with a contract and tell me how you want it written. And honestly, if you decide I'm not going to press you, honestly, if you need 3 months, so what if you could put and closing on or before in 90 days from now? That doesn't put her against the wall, right? That doesn't put her against the wall at all. It actually gives her more time. Good. So give her more of what she wants. Worst case scenario, you can give a soft contract. I hate these things, but sometimes you have to do it. You need to let her know you're not a threat. So here's what I'll do. I'll put in the clause, with 2 weeks notice, you can get out of the contract within 90 or 120-day period. I don't like doing it, but like if you're not getting any traction doing anything, and then you just have to keep following up with her probably every 7 to 10 days. Listen, you're not going to take down every deal, guys. Like sometimes we take calculated risk, and you just got to be a likable guy that she trusts. She's obviously has some trust issues. She doesn't want to be pressed against the wall, and you're stressing her out with it. So on or before is a beautiful option on contracts.
Oh yeah.
And say, I'm not moving into it. And honestly, after I buy it, I'm probably going to take like 30 days to do what I need to do anyways. So that gives you like plenty of time. And then at the end, worst comes to worst, you guys can write anything you want in a contract. I've seen where someone's cat had to approve a contract once, which is a BS clause. So put on there, with 14 days notice, you can cancel the contract up to this date.
That's what I do.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Before I get off, I wanted to give a huge thank you to you guys. On Christmas Eve, December 24th, I locked up my first wholesale deal, and largely due to what you guys did, man. I could not believe it. I absolutely could not believe it. Zach, you told me in early December, I was on a live with you, and you said, man, take a step back, look at what you're doing. You're pulling all these lists. You haven't generated anything from it. The driving for dollars, you've gotten, real opportunities. And on December 24th, I locked up my first deal from a driving for dollars lead, just like you recommended, Zach. So Rick and Zach, thank you guys so much. I shortly after, 4 days after, I left for a trip for a family vacation in the Dominican Republic that had been planned 8 months, before. And so I've been doing everything over email. And I got on a comment section with Zach, and he suggested to just, wholesale it with a well-known dispo company. So I'm working with them. Got it all locked up, and so it's looking like it's going to be a $16,700 profit.
There you go, man. I tell you,
thank you guys.
You got to let everybody know, like he's fought the fight. You had a lot of frustration again, guys. This is the norm, man. This is what I went through. He went through, and we're just trying to show you.
The real question is why haven't you doubled the amount of drivers you got?
Yeah. So
that's great, man. That's
dude, I've been talking to people not nonstop. That I've shifted, a fair amount of my marketing to sellers to people who want to make money driving for dollars. And so, awesome. There's a person I know who's going to make. Yeah.
Awesome.
You got it, man.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everything.
Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it. Boom. Let's get it. Oh yeah. What's up? Caleb saying what's up. Tom, if you don't have to pay and you didn't have to pay $7K for the info, I'm telling you, this is fire info. It's the people that want to go out here and take action. If you watch this a lot, Dylan's always on here. He took the action.
No skin in the game either, right?
He did a lot of effort, trust me. But
no, it's what you have to do, guys. It's like, listen, pay someone, don't pay someone. You still got to put in the work. When you guys hire people, the work doesn't stop. It actually just begins.
Yeah.
So the skin in the game, the way the world works today with technology, I just don't think we should do things the way I learned when I started, which it was only pay for play. If you guys want to do that, that's great. But learning wholesaling, there's no reason to go anywhere to pay for it just to learn the basics of wholesaling. Once you get some money, you want to decide to scale, then you can figure out where to spend your money wisely. It's completely up to you. But wholesaling, to me, it's like learning your ABCs. I didn't pay to learn my ABCs. Actually, I did, unfortunately. But today, with all this technology, how we're connecting with you right now, you have no excuse. There is no barrier to entry. It's just your attitude and your will to drive in this business.
That's it. Same thing for creative finance. So guys, I hope you got some value of this creative financing video. Comment below your creative financing tips, and let's get it. This is Zach Ginn signing out.
Rick Ginn signing out.